Right now, flex your arm. See that bulge moving under your skin? Ancient Romans were absolutely convinced there were tiny mice scurrying around in there. They were so sure of this that they named our muscle tissue musculus, literally little mouse. And honestly, when you watch a bicep ripple and shift, you can see why they thought that. This isn't just some weird linguistic hiccup. It's a window into how people made sense of their own bodies when the inside was basically a black box. And the deeper you dig into this story, the weirder it gets. We live in the age of MRI scans and molecular biology. We can watch individual muscle fibers contract in real time. But for most of human history, the living body was a complete mystery. People could only guess what was happening under their skin based on what they could see and feel from the outside. And when they watched that bicep bulge and shift during arm movement, the most logical explanation seemed to be that something was scurrying around under there, something small, quick, and very much alive. Here's the thing, this wasn't just Roman weirdness. The muscle-mouse connection popped up independently across multiple cultures and languages, which suggests this visual metaphor was so compelling, so obvious to the human eye, that it kept emerging on its own. We're going to trace this bizarre etymology from ancient Greece to medieval England, not just to see how words evolve, but to understand how our ancestors made sense of their world with the tools they had. The story starts in ancient Greece. Greek physicians were building their anatomical knowledge through careful observation, watching athletes in the gymnasium, soldiers in training, and when they saw shapes moving beneath the skin, shapes that reminded them of small animals darting under cloth, they went with it. The Greeks had mais, meaning mouse, and they applied related terms to muscle tissue. This wasn't confusion, it was deliberate metaphor based on what they actually saw. The linguistic connection reveals how they thought about these moving tissues beneath the skin. This Greek innovation gave us the medical prefix myo that we still use today. Myocardium, heart muscle, myalgia, muscle pain. Myosin, the protein that makes muscles contract. Every time a doctor uses one of these terms, they're invoking an ancient comparison between human anatomy and rodent behavior. The Greeks were basically building a zoological vocabulary for human anatomy, turning the body into a kind of menagerie. When Romans encountered Greek medical knowledge, they didn't just adopt it, they refined it. Musculus was a diminutive form of mus, little mouse. This wasn't just translation, it was precision. Where Greeks saw mouse-like movements, Romans saw something smaller, more delicate. That culus suffix added almost affectionate observation, as if these anatomical features were pet mice rather than wild ones. The Roman military engineer Vitruvius took this metaphor and ran with it. He called the movable wooden shelters that protected soldiers approaching enemy walls musculi, little mice. The connection worked on multiple levels. Just as muscle contractions were quick and powerful, these siege engines needed to move rapidly and deliver force. The metaphor had jumped from anatomy to technology. But here's where things get really weird. Romans used musculus for something else entirely, shellfish, what we now call mussels. These marine creatures, with their dark, elongated shells, apparently reminded Roman observers of small mice. This created a linguistic puzzle that lasted over 1,000 years. The same word for both the tissue that moves our bodies and the stationary mollusk that clings to rocks. Medieval manuscripts show the confusion this caused. A 1425 surgical text by Guy de Chauliac tries to sort it out. Muscles and lacertes beni oneself thing, but the muscle is said to the formy of mouse and lacert to the formy of a lizard. Wait, lizards too. He's explaining that muscles could be called either muscles, mouse-like, or lacertes, lizard-like, depending on which animal metaphor you preferred. The word lacertus, meaning muscular, literally meant lizardy. This dual animal imagery wasn't just a Latin thing. Old Church Slavonic used maisai for mouse and misica for arm. Germanic languages developed similar connections. Arabic dialects used related terms for both small animals and muscle tissue. Cornish speakers called the calf muscle logodenfa, literally mouse of the leg. The pattern repeats across language families. This visual connection was so intuitive it emerged independently wherever people closely observed human movement. Medieval English doubled down on the confusion. Alongside muscle from French, English speakers also used lacerte, borrowed directly from Latin lacerta, lizard. A muscular person could be described as either muscular or lacertus, either mouse-like or lizard-like. This wasn't just redundancy. Medieval people were actively choosing between competing animal analogies. They took these metaphors seriously. Medieval physicians believed that understanding muscle movement required understanding animal behavior. They studied how mice scurried, how lizards darted, how these movements translated to human anatomy. Muscle spasms were explained by reference to startled rodents, muscle weakness by comparison to sluggish animals. Some physicians kept small animals as teaching aids, using their movements to explain human physiology to students. The boundary between human and animal anatomy was deliberately blurred. The mouse-muscle connection reveals something profound about human cognition, our tendency to understand the unknown through comparison with the familiar. Ancient people couldn't see inside living bodies, so they built elaborate metaphorical systems to make sense of what they observed. These weren't primitive misconceptions, they were sophisticated attempts to build explanatory frameworks using available evidence. Think about what this tells us. Modern anatomy textbooks describe muscles in terms of fiber types, contractile proteins, neural activation patterns. But for most of human history, the most accurate way to understand muscle function was through animal metaphor. These comparisons weren't obstacles to knowledge, they were knowledge, the best available synthesis of observation and reasoning. The persistence across cultures suggests something deeper. Certain visual patterns are so compelling they shape language itself. The mouse-muscle connection wasn't imposed by authorities or taught in schools. It emerged organically from human observation. When people across different continents and centuries independently arrived at the same comparison, they were responding to something fundamental about how we process visual information. Modern neuroscience confirms this. Our brains are pattern-matching machines, constantly comparing new experiences to stored templates. The mouse-muscle metaphor represents one of humanity's oldest recorded pattern matches, a testament to the consistency of human perception across time and culture. The story also shows how scientific revolutions happen. The mouse-muscle metaphor dominated Western anatomy for over 2 millennia, from ancient Greece through the Renaissance. It was only displaced when new technologies, better dissection, microscopy, chemical analysis, provided more accurate frameworks. But even then, the transition wasn't immediate. Medical texts from the 17th and 18th centuries still occasionally reference the mouse comparison. These metaphors had become that deeply embedded. Today, we can appreciate both the limitations and insights of this ancient metaphor. Yes, muscles aren't actually mice, they're complex arrangements of protein filaments that slide past each other to generate force. But the mouse comparison captured something real about muscle behavior. The quick, darting quality of muscular contraction, the way muscles seem to have a life of their own, the unpredictable nature of spasms and twitches. Next time you flex your bicep, you're participating in an observation that's fascinated humans for millennia. That moving bulge under your skin once seemed so mysterious, so alive, that our ancestors could only explain it by imagining tiny creatures living beneath the surface. They were wrong about the mechanism, but right about the wonder. Muscles are extraordinary, not because they house little mice, but because they represent one of evolution's most elegant solutions to the problem of movement. The ancient metaphor was a placeholder for knowledge we didn't yet possess, but it was also recognition of something genuinely marvelous happening right under our skin. Sometimes the most profound truths hide in the words we use without thinking, carrying forward the awe and curiosity of people who lived thousands of years ago but saw the same mysteries we're still trying to understand.